This is California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you for joining us. On this episode, we'll be speaking with three elected officials from the Inland Empire. We'll be speaking with Rusty Bailey. He's a member of the Riverside City Council. He is running for mayor. We'll be speaking with Adam Rush. He is a council member in Eastvale, a newer city that is having challenges as a result of some laws that came out of Sacramento. And also Mike Gardner, a member of the Riverside City Council who sits on the Seismic Safety Commission of the state of California. We'll be talking to him about a spate of earthquakes recently, but first we are joined by Rusty Bailey, and we thank you for joining us.
Thanks
a candidate for mayor.
That's it.
You made it through the primary. It's now a general election, two candidates. How's it going personally, professionally? Are you enjoying yourself, sir?
It's great. It's great. I started school this week. So
right,
now
you're also a teacher.
My day job, teaching government at Pauley High School, my afternoon job of being on the city council, mayor pro tem of the city council right now, and then my evening job of making sure.
What must it like be for your government students when before them is a sitting Riverside City Council member who's one of two candidates to be mayor?
They're pretty excited about it. You know, they asked me about, is this your sign? So one of them brought a picture in on his phone. Is this your sign in my neighbor's yard? I said, why, yes, it is.
I want to speak with you about one of your sister cities, not in the true sense, in the metaphoric sense, in the Inland Empire, and that's San Bernardino. It's amazing. San Bernardino and Riverside are miles apart, 15, 20 minutes apart, and yet they are miles apart when it comes to the challenges they face. San Bernardino has filed for bankruptcy. Riverside, as I understand it, couldn't be any farther from filing for bankruptcy. Why? What is it? It's a tale of two cities.
It's tough.
Why?
And I feel for San Bernardino and Mayor Morris. And when you look at the history, Route 66 really brought fame and fortune to San Bernardino, as well as some other crossings in the railroad. And Riverside built their fortunes on the water, the Gage Canal, and the citrus industry. And so the economy, I think, has shifted from what was in San Bernardino, as well as losing their Air Force Base.
Right, Norton Air Force Base.
Versus Riverside, that is anchored by 4 institutions of higher learning, 2 school districts, our own public utility. The Air Force Base is still operational as a reserve base, so we have a diversified portfolio.
You know, it's interesting, 1977, San Bernardino was named an All-American City, one of only 10, the only one west of the Mississippi at that time. And now it's the poster child for fiscal mismanagement. That being said, the challenges before San Bernardino are not unique, and I'm sure there are challenges that even Riverside faces. Mayor Patrick Morris has said on the record that one of the biggest challenges for him has been the loss of redevelopment. I know Riverside had a redevelopment agency. How has that played out for your city?
Well, it's hurt. It's hurt, but we have a balanced budget. We've been fiscally responsible throughout our, throughout our entire history. And right now we've got a $40 million reserve, which is enough to keep our bond ratings high. The last bond rating we had for our water bonds was AAA, and our certificates of participation that we used to bond out for the Riverside Renaissance, $1.6 billion. Part of the bonds was in that $1.6 billion. A+ rating, so it's fiscal responsibility as well as just that economic pie that is diversified.
We also know that Mayor Pat Morris had said that another weight weighing on a city is employee compensation. And it's not just salaries, it's pensions. That is a familiar refrain. We know recently the state of California passed some pension reform that I believe will impact cities like Riverside and San Bernardino. Talk to us about how Riverside has been able to manage its employee obligations.
Well, we've always had a good relationship with the unions, and so we come to the table and we look at the challenge and we figure out solutions, and we did that in this last round of pension reform, and the unions came and now they're paying their share of the pensions to PERS, and so that's the compromise that we've come up with. And that's going to save us hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of several decades.
What's also interesting about San Bernardino, not just the city, but the county, is that there is a history of infighting amongst the electeds. Currently, the San Bernardino City Council, they're notorious for not getting along, for backbiting. In San Bernardino County, a current supervisor recently pled guilty to a misdemeanor. 2 very recently retired supervisors, felony indictments. We don't see that in Riverside. What's your sense as to why San Bernardino has grown up that way, yet Riverside has not. It's not a recent development for that county. I mean, years and years of it.
Right. I'll speak to Riverside and say that
Please.
we have a real solid base of community advocates and watchdogs and volunteers, and I think that social capital that is in Riverside has been around for a long time. People being involved in boards and commissions, people being the Kiwanis and Rotary clubs that are out there. Those types of institutions, make sure that our elected officials are valued and valuable and don't get out of line, above board, right, or above reproach in terms of their integrity. And the mayor over the last 33 years has pointed the city in the right direction and has led by example. And I think that his leadership has brought stability to the council and has brought civility to the council. And so I will give him a lot of the credit for that. But also we have those institutions, those leadership development institutions that have created leaders that have then come to the council through experiences they've already had on those leadership exercises and groups.
And let's talk about the mayorship. The current mayor has endorsed your candidacy, Ron Loveridge.
That's correct.
Which no doubt is a boost to your campaign. He's a towering figure. He has been president of the National League of Cities.
That's right.
Talk to me about following in his footsteps should you be successful in November.
Well, it's hard to fill his shoes. I'll never be able to fill his shoes, but I will follow in his footsteps. And I like the analogy of passing the torch because it's one generation to the next. It's time for my generation to step up. I'm running to inspire the next generation of Riversiders to lead by example, to make the new investments and forge the new relationships that it's going to take to address these challenges that we have. But he has really, in the last few years, focused himself outside Riverside because for 19 years or before that, he was focused inside Riverside, building those relationships internally, and going outside gained a lot of status for our city, which brought new business and brought attention and growth. So I think in my first 4 years.
And what's the goal?
I think that I would go back to I need to make sure and know Riverside very well. I was born and raised here. I'm a native Riversider. My grandparents came in 1914. But as mayor, I want to make sure and be the bridge to each of those 26 neighborhoods, to be the bridge to those leadership organizations I talked about, to the school districts.
And I think about those neighborhoods. When we were kids, Riverside looked very differently than it looks today. Today, it's a wonderful melting pot of ethnic diversity. How do you plan to work with this changing demography in this great city?
Reaching out day to day, going out and taking walks in those neighborhoods. The mayor has done what he's called on a month-by-month basis, walk with the mayor. And we've had mayor's night out in elementary schools at night in every elementary school in the city. I will continue to do those types of outreach events.
Let me ask you about walking, because I have heard that you have been walking and walking and walking as part of your campaign. It's a large city geographically and by population. What are the voters saying to you when you knock on their doors?
Thank you for coming to my doorstep. Thank you for coming to my neighborhood. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate you reaching out.
But what issues are they talking to you about?
A lot of it is that they're proud to be Riversiders. They appreciate the investment that we've made in the Renaissance because it has touched every ward.
For our viewers, it's a redevelopment.
It was our economic development plan for the last 5 to 6 years, really capital improvement projects. From sewer systems to libraries, brand new, as well as revitalized libraries, streets. The Fox Theater was a Renaissance project, municipal auditorium. So every ward receives some Renaissance dollars.
Tricky words.
Renaissance dollars, and they appreciate that. Now, there's some of the challenges are crime is has an uptick. We had the realignment issues that are coming before us, but for the most part, it's minor crimes.
Okay.
And we're addressing those issues.
His name is Rusty Bailey, member of the Riverside City Council, candidate for Riverside Mayor. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us. I want to introduce you to Adam Rush. He is a member of the Eastvale City Council. That is a city in Riverside County. It's one of the newest cities in our state. And Eastvale, along with Wildomar, Menifee, and Jurupa Valley, all in the Inland Empire, have been suffering mightily since their incorporation because of
the state trying to essentially take the money away that they promised us initially for incorporation. So we've been in that fight.
Let's go back in time because I think it's important to set the story correctly. In 2004, there was a state law that passed that dealt specifically with new cities. What did that state law say?
That state law essentially gave an in lieu fee, took away the property tax that's normally given to all cities in the state, and gave us vehicle license fees, car registration fees.
And so, in other words, it said that new cities could not take property taxes.
Correct.
But in exchange, new cities would be able to get money through the VLF, the vehicle license fee.
Correct.
Which is curious because that was around the time that there was a big fight over VLF, and we know that the VLF fee dropped as a result of the Davis recall from 2% to about 0.65%. So then what happened?
Well, then what happened is after we incorporated, we were promised that vehicle license fee, and through SB 89, which happened in 2010, that was wiped out. Unexpected, we lost upwards about 40% of our total budget.
And so was that specifically for new cities or for all cities?
That was for all cities in the state, but what the state didn't realize is the 4 new cities, it nearly decimated.
And as I understand, part of the reason is that new cities were given an extra amount to get going under this VLF formula?
Correct.
So I want to get a sense from you as an example of one of the 4 cities in the Inland Empire. How dramatic has it been with this sudden loss of state revenue?
Well, it's been extremely dramatic. We have been somewhat fortunate relative to the other 3 because people still want to come and shop and live in Eastvale, and that's been kind of eking us along. But 40% of our budget, and our budget is small. At that time, it was only about $9 million. We had lost over $3 million of our total budget. Our police and fire are about $5 million. So we had to seriously look at how we'd be able to maintain public safety in our city.
So were you operating independent police and fire, and now you've contracted with the county?
We've always been contract,
but you still have those funds, that bill.
We still have to pay a significant portion of our budget for public safety.
How do you do that? I mean, you have $3 million, you have what, $5 million, and you have to pay them $5 million?
We made immediate drastic cuts. We cut about $2 million out of the budget immediately through various means and just stopping a lot of other contracts to make sure that we could still provide a basic sense of service and public safety. Since then, our sales tax has been increasing somewhat, so we've been able to kind of live off that, but we're looking on a horizon about 2013, 2014, having to make some significant cuts as we've been living on reserves in addition to all of that if this money is not restored.
Yeah, as we speak today, I know that your cities are hopeful that the money will be restored through a bill in Sacramento. I want to talk about your friends in Jurupa Valley. I know you're not on that council, but as I understand it, maybe you can give us some anecdotes, that city is particularly in dire straits.
They are, and they have said publicly that they will fail in 1.5 to 2 years.
That means disincorporation.
Disincorporate.
Which we haven't seen since 1972. I mean, we have not seen a disincorporation.
It's very rare.
Now, what's also interesting is on the heels of all of this, I'll call it misery, San Bernardino, which you're right at the San Bernardino County line. I mean, how far is the city of San Bernardino from Eastvale? 15 minutes?
About 15, 20 minutes.
They have declared bankruptcy.
They have.
And so it really is a perfect storm of municipal misery. How does this ire of municipal bankruptcy play into the challenges facing
Well, not only San
Eastvale?
Bernardino, but the city of Stockton.
Of course.
And fortunately,
Lakes.
we're seeing somewhat of a domino effect, which is really scary. We haven't mismanaged our finances, and I think that's an aspect of it as well. But we have actually taken advantage of those situations and learned from how they got into those particular situations with, retirement costs and pension costs and all the other ancillary issues.
But presumably, wouldn't bankruptcy be a possibility? I mean, you're so new, but if you have a budget of, what is it now?
Right now, our budget's about $14 million.
$14 million, and you have bills more than that. You know you have more bills more than that. I mean, how do you survive?
Yeah. Well, we're surviving day to day, and thankfully, we've been increasing our resident population. We've been increasing our tax base slowly and steadily. We've been on the ground floor and doing basically a grassroots campaign to bring economic development to our city. And that, in contrast, I think geographically where we are to the other 4 cities, we've been able to survive essentially based upon people coming to our city
Right.
wanting to live and shop. That's been our savior.
Ask you about Proposition 30, which is the governor's tax initiative. That's supposed to raise a significant amount of money. I understand most of that money would go to education, would also go to the realignment of prisons. Could it also help cities like yourself if it passes, Prop 30?
I don't see how it can with the budget at the state level, the way that it's in, and what the governor has said. You know, like I said, education, realignment. There are, from what we've seen, the state and the governor particularly are more concerned about issues not related to local government. And I think we've seen that with the dissolution of RDA and some other things to try to take a lot of those local funds away to fund what they believe, rightly or wrongly, is more important than local government. We have a different opinion.
Now, what's interesting about that is cities do have the ability to pass local taxes. I know, for example, the Los Angeles County is putting an extension of a sales tax increase for transportation on their November ballot. Is that something that Eastvale might consider?
No.
Why?
No. That was a major concern a year and a half ago when we were pushing for incorporation. A lot of concern from the community of, will this raise our taxes? And that's a promise that we put out there even before we were a city, that this will not raise your taxes. We can't control what the state and the feds are going to do, but we are going to hold solid on the current tax base and the current funding base. No one could have foreseen what happened with VLF, and we have done everything we can to get over that funding issue with not having to raise taxes. The issues coming before, our position has starkly been no. We're going to get through it through other means.
Now, we know that in November 2010, the voters of the state of California passed what's known as Prop 22, which prevents the state from raiding local coffers. It actually wound up being the reason for the demise of the redevelopment compromise, because what was supposed to happen was that the redevelopment agencies through the cities would send money back to Sacramento to keep their RDAs open, but the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that under Prop 22. So are you trying to use Prop 22 as a weapon, for lack of a better term, to try to prevent these state raids now or in the future?
Yes. I think what Prop 22 and what we've seen throughout the state is the citizens of local government are tired of the state coming in and saying, this is mine, and just taking it. And essentially, a lot of the conversation has been, we're going to take it, sue us, and then we'll figure out it later. Prop 22 was good legislation. I don't think the state liked it, and they've fought it since through RDA, and unfortunately, we've lost that battle. There's a VLF lawsuit going on as well. You know, we don't have a lot of friends at the state level, either in the judiciary or in the executive, and so we're in an uphill battle for every penny.
And it's interesting, in the era of term limits, so many of the Sacramento legislators came from city councils,
Over
from
80%.
local government. I mean, Governor Brown, before he was governor and attorney general, he was mayor of Oakland. And so one had thought that would be a benefit to local governments, but it's been quite a challenge. Any thought about banding together? I mean, joining the city of Riverside, joining the city of Harupa Valley? I mean, maybe bigger is better?
Well, I think in our case, we're trying to become self-sustainable as much as possible. That was talked originally when both cities were going through incorporation, Harupa Valley and Eastvale. You know, there's a stark demographic and cultural difference that I think our citizens might have some concerns over. Plus, we're a newer community. I think the disadvantage that Harupa has is they have a lot of older communities and a significant amount of resources.
His name is Adam Rush. He is a member of the City Council in Eastvale. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Mike Gardner. He's a member of the Riverside City Council, but today he joins us as the chair of California's Seismic Safety Commission. How did a Riverside City Council member become the chair of California's Seismic Safety Commission?
The commission is made up of 16 members appointed by the governor and some agency members, but of the 16 members, 2 have to be local government representatives, and I was recommended by the local League of California Cities.
Why?
Partly my background, my formal training is anthropology and geography, and the geography is on the physical side.
There you have it. Okay, let me ask you, because in late August, there was a swarm of earthquakes in Imperial County. I understand more than 400 earthquakes. And it's kind of interesting, you know, in California, we're so used to it. We'll be sitting in a restaurant, the earth will shake, we'll look around, and we'll just keep going. But still, 400 is a little unsettling.
Well, and several of those were big enough that you wouldn't just notice it.
Right.
It's going to cause you to really
Yeah, I think there were
stop.
a couple in the 5s.
Yes.
Right.
5.3, 5.5.
So what's going on? Why is the earth moving?
In that area, it's called the Brawley seismic zone.
Got it.
And it's where 2 faults kind of come together. The Imperial Fault coming up out of Mexico and the southern end of the San Andreas Fault. And it has a history of these kinds of earthquake swarms. And no one knows for sure what they mean or how long they will last, but they have happened before.
But does it indicate that we've had these swarms that we're on the verge of the big one?
Not necessarily. No one can say what the swarm means.
And wouldn't it, to me, it would seem that it's a good thing to have these smaller earthquakes because it releases pressure. Is that right? Or again, I'm just a novice.
Well, and I am not either a geologist or a
understand.
seismologist,
But from what you've learned.
in general, yes, it relieves stress in one area, but that may concentrate stress in another, and that's how you can trigger an event in one area, can trigger an event farther away.
And I understand the main area of concern is not so much in Imperial County, but it's where the Pacific plate comes up against the North American plate.
Right.
And that is because they are going under each other, or one's going on top of the other. And is that what the San Andreas Fault is?
The San Andreas Fault is a piece of that, and it's actually a north-south slip.
Right.
San Francisco and Los Angeles are getting closer together every year by about 2 inches.
That's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about the Seismic Safety Commission. What is the goal of the commission?
The commission is the chief advisory entity for the governor and the legislature for earthquake safety issues. We do a lot of education. We collaborate in and fund some earthquake research. We've had some really interesting projects
Yeah, and let's
recently.
talk about some of those because, you know, I referenced the kind of stereotypical Californian sitting in a restaurant and not moving when the ground shakes. And, you know, on the one hand, it's nice, we're not alarmists. On the other hand, are we taking the severity or potential severity of earthquakes seriously? That's where education comes in.
It is, and I think overall most of us don't take it seriously
I kind of
enough.
agree. I do.
You really should have 10 days to 2 weeks worth of supplies in your home and in your office. A few of us do.
Right. I know the Red Cross right now is engaging in, I think it's called the Southern California Shakeout or whatever it
Yes.
is. They're looking to really get Southern California prepared. Some of the research projects you're doing right now, though, are really quite innovative, if I may say. One is with Deloitte.
Yes.
And I wouldn't expect Deloitte, which is really an accounting firm, I guess, to get involved in earthquake preparedness, but they are.
They are.
Explain the Deloitte project.
Their interest really is in continuing business activity after a natural disaster. So Deloitte came to the commission and said, we'd like to work with you and local business to make sure that business can resume as quickly as possible following an earthquake, major earthquake, and that California's market share is protected. Because if we can't get them back in business, they will move.
And if we consider that the Twin Ports are very close to anyone living in California, and many don't realize how pivotal those Twin Ports are to our regional economy, our state economy, and the national economy. I think it's almost 750,000 jobs are reliant upon the ports. And if there's dislocation at the ports, I mean, Deloitte is onto something. It could be
Exactly.
quite problematic.
But the unique thing about the Deloitte study is they went to business and said, what do you need from government?
Usually business doesn't do that.
Well, and traditionally government goes to business and says, we're going to do this for you whether you need it or not. We think you need it.
How much have we learned from the Fukushima earthquake in Japan? Because that really is an example of major city centers being impacted by a dramatic earthquake and ultimately the tsunami.
Right. It helps demonstrate the importance of a high level of building standard.
And I actually would be remiss if I didn't mention that Riverside is a sister city to Sendai.
Yes.
And Sendai was the main city impacted by
It was the closest big city.
Right. So did you go to Sendai? I think Mayor Loveridge did.
And Mayor Loveridge did. I did not.
So, I mean, you're even more better prepared for this commission since you're so close to Sendai.
To some extent, yes, I think. I think the real lesson from Sendai is earthquakes can be bigger than they are projected to be. No one thought the fault that produced that earthquake could produce as large an earthquake as it did. And the second, most of the damage in Japan from that set of earthquakes was from the tsunami.
Exactly. And I also want to ask you about fires because, you know, when we think about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, the earthquake was dramatic. But what caused the most damage, as I'm told, were the fires. And so I understand that that is another source of research through the Seismic Safety Commission.
It is. Every major earthquake in a developed area results in fires. And unfortunately, it also damages the firefighting capability of the area. It breaks the pipes, it knocks out the electricity. So the commission is helping fund a study, or did help fund a study, that looks at how fire departments can supplement their firefighting capability. It kind of divides it in two areas. Those cities that are near a water source, the ocean, a river, a lake,
Right.
And those that are somewhat distant. So looking at something like Riverside that is distant from a water source, the thought was it may be possible to lay a pipeline in flood control channels that go from the inland areas to discharge floodwaters into the ocean.
Yeah.
To pump ocean water back.
Right. I was recently on vacation and I met a woman, an American woman, who lives in Japan. Her husband's a reporter for Bloomberg. And they were there for the earthquake, the Fukushima earthquake. They have children. And I asked them what happened to the children. They were in public school at the time. Are we prepared? Because apparently Japan was fairly well prepared vis-a-vis their schools.
They were, and California is. The commission has had something to do with that. Following 1933 Long Beach earthquake, building standards for schools were improved dramatically, and they are among the most strongly built buildings in the state today. The part that wasn't looked at as carefully is all those things that are in a school building. Shelving, light fixtures, all those things. And the commission worked on a study about how you anchor those things so that you don't have things fall and hurt people or block access out after the earthquake is over.
So are the recommendations being implemented by various schools, private or public, for that matter?
Yes, they are. It's not universal. We continue to urge that they be. But there's a checklist that the commission has produced that's available to any school district for their use.
In our final moments, I understand that the commission had been funded through a small tax that was placed upon insurance policies.
Right.
There's some controversy about whether that tax should have passed with 2/3. What's the report?
Well, for many years, the commission was funded with a surcharge, if you will, on insurance policies. It was never actually collected from the
ratepayers,
the policy holders, because it's such a small amount, less than 15 cents per policy. But under a recently adopted amendment to the Constitution, it's defined as a tax and it requires a 2/3 vote to pass. So the legislature is looking at moving the funding for the Seismic Safety Commission to the general fund.
And that will allow the surcharge to continue?
Well, it would actually be a general part of the general fund.
His name is Mike Gardner. He's a member of the Riverside City Council, also chair of the California Seismic Safety Commission. Thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.